Great! We always go to the best places in the realms. Are you sure that tome worked right, Sand?
Yes, it did. But without knowing the exact location where the King of Shadows is...
So the tome was useless then?
We wouldn't even be here without it, you idiot girl, so I suggest we continue with this Let's Play of the original official campaign for Neverwinter Nights 2. This little discussion we're having here is at the final area of the game between Quara and Sand, and that little relationship is going to prove to be a problem later on. Well, not much later on. We don't have much time left. We're almost at the end. Now, most of the influence checks in this final area are between sort of who do you have higher influence with rather than who do you have and how much influence do you have. There are a couple that matter how much influence, but most of the influence, important influence decisions take place here. So if you've been abusing your party members, this is where those chickens are going to come home to roost. I'm going to side with Sand in this particular thing. I've been kind of siding with Sand most of the way through.
And maybe Aldenon chose to send us here. Or Sand.
Enough. The defenses of Illefarn still surround us. Even if we had known his location, we would have ended up here. Even with the tome's power, the wards around Illefarn remain strong, indeed. Finding the King of Shadows will be even harder than I thought.
Hard? It looks like there's only one place to go. Straight ahead. I don't think he's trying to hide at all.
I don't think he is either. And I think there's more than walls blocking our path ahead.
Even in this place, something must still live. And I think we have not yet had our final say with the King of Shadows' allies, Garius or Bishop.
And this is just an opportunity to gain influence with Cassavir. Cassavir's influence isn't going to matter for me. There are two options for the ending. There's the evil option or the good option, depending on essentially what your character is. You don't actually get to choose, unless you're evil, in which case you can actually take either path. You can be sort of principled evil or chaotic evil. But since I'm playing a good character, I'm sort of railroaded into being good. Not surprising, I guess. But if you choose the good option, or if you fail to choose and follow the good option regardless, Cassavir's influence doesn't really matter. But hey, you know, we'll get some influence for the fun of it.
I, too, wish to see justice done here, and I wish to hear what Bishop says on his behalf. Perhaps, at last, we shall have the truth. This journey, traveling with you, has been an ordeal, and it is not one that I can bear much longer. Let us find the King of Shadows and end this, so we may part ways at last.
We should also beware of wards and traps as well. And at no point should we separate.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I don't think Nishka heard you. She seems to be gone.
Huh? She was right here. Did she sneak off?
Okay, well, you know, this is not exactly friendly territory.
No, she was taken.
Taken? What, by the King of Shadows?
Know that I think we must be on our guard, and our wills must be focused on the task ahead. If we allow ourselves to be divided in group or mind, then he will win.
The Gith is correct. We need to reach the King of Shadows, and quickly. If this is the only route before us, then so be it. But we must move on.
Alright, and you get to pick, for some reason everybody is here, other than Nishka and, well, Bishop, but you can only walk around with 5 characters in your party as usual. Sort of the arbitrary headcount limit comes into play. However, for the very last part of this area, there isn't an arbitrary headcount limit, and you actually get to use all of your characters. So I don't know why they didn't allow you to do that through the whole dungeon and just make it correspondingly harder, but I don't know. Eleni is absolutely critical to this area. You're not actually required to have her in your party, but Foundation of Stone is very important for an upcoming fight, I'll just put it that way. And I guess I'll bring along Cassavir as well, just to have a straight-up fighter. Now, everybody else has gained at least one level, in the case of Eleni and Cassavir, who I was using previously, and
what is it?
Amon and Ziggy are both at 1 level. Actually, you need to gain 2 levels. So I'll do all that off screen, cast some buffs, and be right back. We are not considered to have rested, so Eleni is actually kind of short on spells at the moment. We will have to find a place to rest here, and I'll explain that later.
Yes.
I'm going to show this last level for Jarrow on screen. Jarrow is sort of an annoying character because, well, the skills he has by default are not the skills you would generally choose for an AI-controlled warlock. Specifically, you want to avoid having him have any Eldritch Blast types which do negative energy damage, like Bewitching Blast. Sorry, not Bewitching, Beshadowed Blast. Because they will cause the, essentially it won't affect the undead enemies in this area. So you have to give him things that essentially will not be dumb. I also particularly want to take Hideous Blow off of him because I want him to be a sort of long-range spellcaster instead of a melee spellcaster, because we already have too many people in melee and it's just sort of, they just get in each other's way after a certain point. This last area is a little thin, unfortunately, so you do have to deal with just your party members getting in each other's way a lot. And, you know, while we're getting in each other's way, I may as well do it while large and in charge. Shapechange is not a very useful spell. It's more useful for just humor purposes than actually, you know, winning the game. I suppose if you were kind of an Eldritch Knight type mage that didn't have a decent weapon or some sort of low magic world, it would be okay. I can't even damage these bone spiders because they are, essentially I don't do enough damage to get past their resistance, so that's a bit of a waste. Now, one thing that I noticed when casting Shapechange is that I'm not sure if it applies my bonus spells for high intelligence twice, or if it was not applying them previously and it was something that was not loaded, but the number of spells I had is different. It appears to be a as opposed to a spider, which is what these are. And I guess spiders are bugs, even if they're not insects. This area is tight enough that it's really kind of one-on-one combat, unless you happen to be in the midst of the enemies at the start. And it's helpful to have a character who can sort of act as your point to inflict maximum damage, and then have, you know, essentially people like Jarrow back there who fire some. So he's not doing very much damage, at least he's doing damage and he's not kind of getting in the way, unlike everything else. And he is doing something. I mean, he killed that. But as you see, my other two companions are just kind of stuck back there without not really knowing what to do, because they're stuck on the terrain. There is all sorts of loot in this area. There's just all these random corpses lying around with stuff on them. But there's not actually anything interesting, and since there's nothing left to buy and nothing left to sell, unless you actually find a piece of equipment you actually want, it's not likely going to be very useful. I'm going to attempt to rest here, but usually what happens when you try to rest here is you get ambushed by things, and it's usually just a variety of just fairly weak undead enemies, and they don't pose a threat, it just makes it difficult to rest. That massive ring of 150s there, that was mass heal being cast as an offensive spell. Ziggy is quite effective for this area. Turn Undead, on the other hand, is completely useless because these undead have way too many hit dice for it. Anyway, off screen I'm going to rest up and try and get some spells. That second level 9 spell slot, however, disappears after you rest after casting Shapechange, so I'm assuming that it's a bug added that adds artificial spell slots. Probably it accidentally applies the bonus spells from intelligence twice, but oh well. It would be nice to have 2 level 9 spell slots so I didn't have to actually rest so much, so that I could actually cast some of these spells instead of using scrolls, but oh well, we'll just use scrolls. The Flee the Scene ability that Jero is using there is essentially a short duration haste. It's actually a fairly useful thing for a warlock to know. Your death. Because, well, it means you're always hasted, even if there's nothing really all that useful to kill. Because haste really is powerful. I'm going to throw around a scroll of Meteor Swarm. If you use a scroll from a hotbar, it will only use sort of what it considers the default attack or option from that scroll. If you use a scroll from inventory, you can also cast the other variants of it, which is important for Meteor Swarm because I believe it casts the area version if you cast it directly, but the targeted version is really the most powerful when it comes to killing civilians. And some skeletons over here. Burst of Glacial Wrath it's a later added spell. I guess actually it doesn't even do damage to skeletons. Just sort of annoying. It's not a very good spell. It's a druid spell as well. And I guess, you know, it's not terrible, but they really could have done more with it. Or just not bothered with it, frankly. Now, this area does not have any doors to go further forward. If you want to proceed, you have to go towards these strange black fog places. And they will teleport you around, more or less. Now, Flee the Scene is nice, so I'm going to cast an extended haste. I think Flee the Scene only lasts 10 rounds or something. It's not very long. Whereas my extended haste is now lasting 40 rounds. It lasts about 4 real-life minutes, which is not huge, but it's not bad. Alright, this is not the direction we want to go. Sometimes you just end up wandering around here because it's not a linear path through the area. There are no branches really, but there's not a direct path. Oh look, blade golems. Hey, I guess they're not undead, so I guess that's a change. I'm gonna throw a gate here. Gate is the sort of quote-unquote ultimate summoning spell, but if you look at the pit fiend it summons, or what is it? It's not a pit fiend, it's a horn devil, I think? Yeah, horn devil. It's okay, but it's only a level 15. It's not exactly a superpowered summon. It has more hit points than the equivalent level summon 9 or whatever it is. It's still not wonderful. And I think I'm probably going to try and end the episode here just because, well, we're out of time. So, next time we will continue forward into the shadows, and maybe make it to the last boss.